Ben 10 is a show that's all about change. And I'm not just talking about the aliens Ben changes into. The show has evolved throughout its various iterations, with some details altered or lost along the way. Sometimes it's a retcon. Sometimes the writers simply forget about something, like Humangasaur's growing ability. But one of the things I was most disappointed to see fall by the wayside was the different colors used to represent the Omnitrix's modes. I'm going to discuss each of these colored modes, and afterwards I'll speculate about why I think this detail was quietly scrapped. The vast majority of these colored modes come from the original series. The most iconic one, and the one that's naturally stuck around, is the green active mode. This signifies that the Omnitrix is ready to use, fully charged with Omni energy. Ben can dial up an alien and transform into green flash. In the original series and the reboot, the Omnitrix symbol would be white while transformed, but Alien Force, Ultimate Alien, and Omniverse replace this with the regular green symbol, making this white mode technically our first casualty. Dwayne McDuffie called it a glitch, and Derek J. Wyatt said it was a scratch guard that fell off sometime between Destroy All Aliens and the 11-year-old flashbacks in Omniverse, though 10-year-old Ben's missing it in UAF. Even the reboot ditches the white when Ben activates Omni-Kick's armor, though funnily enough, when he upgrades to Omninaut, a white Omnitrix symbol appears on the visor. The green mode is also able to be triggered early by the Omnitrix's failsafes, though sometimes it will just send out a green energy pulse. Most of the Omnitrix's other features occur while it's green, so check out the Ink Tank's more comprehensive video if you want to see more of that. That said, there is one spin-off of the green mode that I want to mention, because I've literally never seen anybody else mention it. When Ben loses feedback, he does something to the Omnitrix. The faceplate opens up to expose its circuitry, and it's not really explained if this is because malware damaged it and Ben was just failing to transform, or if he was intentionally overloading it, but he shoves it into malware and overloads him, though it almost looks like it was trying to use its DNA repair function. Regardless, it felt very random. But I think we've actually seen it once before, after the failed hacking of the Omnitrix released Chromastone, Spider-Monkey, Goop, and Waybig. So I think this is some kind of lost alien mode. Anyway, tangent over, back to the colors. The inverse of the green mode is the red recharge mode, easily the most iconic additional mode.
Oh man, I hate that sound!
When the Omnitrix runs out of power, ostensibly after 10 minutes, Ben will revert to human in a red flash, and will be unable to transform for, again, presumably 10 minutes. This mode was typically not shown for later Omnitrixes, although it came back after Ben hacked the Omnitrix and broke it in Season 3 of Alien Force. And it also returned in the reboot, where we actually get the only instance of an alien silhouette visible during it. However, after the classic series, the timeout always occurred with a green flash. The red flash did not even return in flashbacks, making it quietly retconned away. The Ultimatrix also turned red when Alpha hacked it and timed Ben out in Ben 10 Generator Rex Heroes United, and the red color also appeared as a Geiger counter on the Ultimatrix to warn of radiation. Although Master Control isn't supposed to time out, Ben actually depleted the Omnitrix enough to trigger red mode when curing a massive number of DNA aliens in War of Worlds. The Ultimatrix was depleted just from the effort of curing Eunice, since its DNA repair feature was incomplete, and it had to sync with the Unitrix to provide enough power for even one use. The next most recurring color, and my personal favorite, is the yellow mode, completing our stoplight trifecta. This is the scan/capture mode, and just like with the Pokemon Go Plus, it means there's something new to obtain. In the original series, this unlocked Blitzwolfer, Snarrow, and Frankenstrike when a member of the Halloween trio touched the watch and it sampled their DNA. Although we don't see the glow, this also allows the Scare to cheat Undeath yet again. I can excuse the absence of the yellow here in service of the twist. It showed up in Alien Force when Ben broke the Omnitrix and needed to reabsorb his escaped aliens. Now it can scan from a distance as a beam of light. Ben also scans his Scare once again by willingly getting possessed, but I can't excuse the missing yellow here. Surprisingly, it returned as the central plot point of the first season of Ultimate Alien. It seems that the Omnitrix's data was mostly sourced from the Milky Way. After all, even a single galaxy is massive. Agricore's 5 captives were taken all the way from the Andromeda Galaxy, and as such are completely absent from the Primus database. It seems that Albedo's weapon couldn't override the core research purpose of the Omnitrix, as the Ultimatrix shuts down all other functions in the pursuit of scanning that uncatalogued DNA, although it can be done even while Ben is transformed. Conveniently, nobody ever mentions this drawback when saying that Ben could scan enemy faces in crossover matchups. Ben can also intentionally scan a species that is already in the database just to unlock the transformation, as he did for Chameleon. While this mode showed up twice in Omniverse, it is our first definitive victim of the removal of the colored modes. In the episode Outbreak, Liam slams the Omnitrix right as the device is fixed, repairing his and the other prisoners' Omnitrix corrupted DNA. The physical impact and the rebooting of the device seems to have activated the scan mode even though Liam was already in the database, giving Ben access to Kickenhawk. We see the scan mode return in The Vampire Strikes Back, when Zeskar resurrects Lord Transil, a Vladat whose species went extinct before the Omnitrix was created. The Omnitrix's range has been updated to a ludicrous degree, detecting the DNA from orbit, though seemingly not able to sense Lord Transil's remains until they were fully regenerated. It threatens to lock Ben out unless he turns around and collects the DNA, fulfilling its purpose as a research tool. In fitting with the wackier tone of Omniverse, the Omnitrix literally plays hot and cold with Ben to navigate him. And this time, the Omnitrix doesn't need to touch the DNA source. It doesn't even shoot out a beam of light, which probably would have hurt Transil anyway. It just informs Ben that the DNA was successfully analyzed. The Omnitrix also might have reobtained feedback by scanning the fragments from within malware, which young Ben may have been a representation of, since malware absorbs everything else he turns to dust. Interestingly, scan mode was originally meant to play a much larger role in Omniverse. The yellow mode kind of shows up in the reboot, maybe? When Ben unlocks Gax, it starts beeping and flashing a color that's a lot closer to a light green than a yellow. While this is tied to Ben getting a new alien, it isn't a scam, it's actually a homing beacon for Vil to come reclaim his other half. Duncan Rouleau claimed that the Omnitrix didn't have a scan mode, but this was contradicted in Ben 10 versus the Universe, even if it wasn't shown. Even now, whenever I collect a new DNA sample in the lab, I still say, DNA sample acquired. I liked this mode so much that I deluded myself into believing it showed up twice in early Alien Force. When Goop went inside the Tekkanon robot in his first appearance, I thought that was enough for a scan, especially because of the yellow light on his anti-gravity disc. I also thought Ben had scanned a DNA alien and maxed out based on what the Omnitrix said. Apparently this actually was true, but the Omnitrix deleted the Xenocyte because it wasn't sapient. Weirdly, an early ad for Ultimate Alien talking about Ben being able to turn into any alien he'd ever been also included a DNA alien. Ben 10 Secret of the Omnitrix introduced us to the orange self-destruct mode. Orange rings slowly close in on the Omnitrix, acting as a countdown marked by sporadic energy bursts, accelerated by using the Omnitrix. This was intended as a failsafe to stop the device from falling into the wrong hands, but in a massive case of overkill, the explosion would have destroyed the entire universe, Annihilarg style. When it and the Omnitrix are deactivated, we also briefly get to see a gray deactivated mode. The self-destruct mode shows up in a second series finale for Alien Force, when Ben tries to get Vilgax to give up the Omnitrix. Of course, this time the orange color is gone. Surprisingly, we get to see the self-destruct actually go off this time. But since it was activated by voice command instead of an error, the countdown is only set to 30 seconds, preventing the charge from building up to cataclysmic levels. Orange seems to be the generic color for random Omnitrix modes going forward. In Destroy All Aliens, Tetrax locks Ben into switching between aliens instead of timing out for his protection, and Tetrax makes the Omnitrix briefly turn orange. Pretty ironic since he was previously trying to turn off in orange mode. The reboot uses an orange mode twice near its end. In Ben 10 vs. the Universe, Azimuth uses it as a countdown, though it uses alien symbols instead of rings. Ben has to prove himself to Azimuth before the countdown ends, or he'll lose the Omnitrix. Then, in Alien Extinction, the same mode appears, acting as a failsafe that decouples the Omnitrix from Ben safely so that Alien X doesn't kill or injure him removing it. Maximilian says that not every Ben is lucky enough to have this failsafe, which we see at the beginning. While both instances of this countdown are tied to the removal of the Omnitrix, this just feels like a reuse that I feel like they could have done more with. Lastly, the Omnitrix's glitches in Alien Swarm were an orangish color. These seem to be the yellow to scan mode going haywire, and Ben is able to focus the scan into an offensive energy pulse. The Omnitrix can also change color due to interference. Destroy All Aliens had Gwen's mana turn the Omnitrix pink, though it doesn't fully replace the green, giving it more of a watermelon color. The more memorable and consistent case of this interference is the purple mode, which I'm also quite fond of. This is caused by Eon and his deep connection to the device. In Race Against Time, it occurs whenever Eon is near, and can prevent Ben from transforming. It also seems painful. Once Eon finally captures Ben, he uses this to insert his Cronian DNA into the Omnitrix, kind of like the scan mode. He removes the time limiter, which apparently allows his consciousness to overwhelm Ben's once he transforms. Based on him saying, "You are me," and two cannot exist at the same time, I think the implication is that this Eon is already a fallen Ben from an earlier loop. Gwen's able to snap Ben out of the transformation, but Ben wonders if he could ever access those powers again. This means he's one mistransformation away from becoming Eon, and since this is an alternate timeline, that may be what happened, since he's later referred to as being an evil alternate Ben. The purple mode makes a surprise reappearance in Ultimate Alien along with Eon's return. Ben and Ultimate Ben 10,000 are interrupted from destroying the Hands of Armageddon as their Ultimatrixes turn purple and they collapse. Paradox warns them that he's using their power to open a breach, and Ben notes that Eon didn't come from the hands, he came from our watches, whatever that means. Eon does mess with the Omnitrix again in Omniverse. He grabs young Ben and Teen Ben's Omnitrixes at the same time. Well, that doesn't make sense, but it was the same place across time. And this swaps their minds. Eon says this wasn't the effect he was going for, but he doesn't elaborate on what the original plan was. And of course, this is all done with a standard green flash instead of a purple one. Funnily enough, the reboot villain Lord Decibel, who bears a striking resemblance to Eon, is also able to mess with the Omnitrix. While attempting to destroy it, it glitches between red and green that accidentally quick changes Ben. The last color mode, and by far the rarest, is the blue mode. This shows up in the first episode of Alien Force, and fittingly, it only appears in the Omnitrix's first form. The Omnitrix seemed to be adjusting to Ben's new physiology, or rebooting from dormancy. After the startup period, the Omnitrix recalibrates into the Alien Force appearance with a new playlist. This briefly gets repeated in the Season 3 premiere during the hacking sequence, but without the blue. Technically, the reboot also has a light blue mode when it's charged with full Monai energy, but it shows up for a whopping 1 frame. When the device Ben built in his sleep as Shock Rock activates, it uses the Omnitrix as a beacon and creates a portal inside of it. Interestingly, this instantly recharges the Omnitrix, something Ben exploits later in the episode using Vilgax's energy cage, though the device doesn't turn blue again. The Omnitrix is engulfed in a purple aura when the high override enters it, but it's hard to tell if the actual dial changed. While the Omnitrix's electricity is usually portrayed as green, it has been occasionally blue and glitchy, mostly in Season 3 of Alien Force. This was rectified by Ultimate Alien, though ironically blue would have made more sense if the episode fused. We also see some blue energy along with the green and pink inside the Omnitrix after it gets messed up and destroy all aliens, though I don't know why the Retaliator armor's colors are there before Ben encounters him. And so, we have a veritable rainbow of colors for the Omnitrix, and yet the functions were all generally replaced with a generic green as the series progressed. Why? Well, the first reason is probably simplicity. In the classic series, the red mode was a source of drama. The episodes were written around Ben being trapped as a human for a certain amount of time. There's a cost and a risk for transforming that leaves him vulnerable. Later series wanted to pack more aliens into the episodes, so they didn't bother making the device red so they didn't have to worry about when he could transform again. The red flash was probably initially removed because Ben didn't traditionally time out after the first series. He usually manually reverted in Alien Force, and the Omnitrix and Ultimatrix charge seemed tied to Ben's stamina or the strength of the alien, with quick changing and ultimizing draining the battery faster. Omniverse mostly got rid of the quick change. Ben basically times out anytime he gets knocked down, but then usually has basically no recharge time. To Alien Force Season 3's credit, they did make an earnest attempt to bring back the red mode. This is probably part of the network's push to make that season more like classic. It's probably not a coincidence that the yellow mode returned there too. Another reason for the increased prevalence of color modes on the original Omnitrix was probably because it had more elements to change, specifically the tubes. They're normally white whether the Omnitrix is green or red, but the yellow and purple modes changed them. The tubes do turn green when Ben unlocks Wildvine, and when Ben transforms in Race Against Time, though. And while the light blue mode in the reboot also changes the tube color, this is probably more because it happened to be the upgraded design of the Omnitrix, which already recolored the tubes to green and red. I'm actually impressed by Ultimate Alien's maintenance of the color modes. It put yellow front and center, and even brought back purple, which I never would have expected. The return of the yellow mode, at least, may have also been because of the Ultimatrix once again having tube-like wires to recolor. But by Omniverse, nothing. Was it just laziness? Where did our rainbow go? Well, the problem started with albedo. The red mode was phased out so that albedo's red device could contrast with Ben's green. The Ultimatrix starts out red. I wonder if albedo's timeout would be green. And for a single frame, we get to see what a red Omnitrix would look like. Alpha's hacked Ultimatrix was red as well. Red would also be used for the Nematrix and albedo's Ultimatrix in Omniverse, and the Antitrix in the reboot. And at this point, I think the animators forgot about the red flash. The alternate Omnitrixes are where the heart of the problem lies. Omniverse introduced a ton of alternate timelines, each complete with a different color-coded Omnitrix. Ben's eye color and aliens, even the parts of them that weren't green, became recolored to match the devices. Albedo was, of course, red. Ben 23 had the pre-recalibrated Omnitrix, but it was a constant blue. Gwen 10 was, of course, pink. Mad Ben was orange, and while his Omnitrix was eventually locked, activating self-destruct was never mentioned. Benzaro was purple, and it would have been confusing if Eon's presence turned everyone's devices that color. Although there wasn't a mode for them, Bad Ben was mint green and Nega Ben was black. These colors were chosen to reflect these characters, and the colored modes were scrapped to avoid confusing a viewer into thinking they were seeing an alternate Ben. Though there was no yellow Ben, we're not counting Argit, so there really wasn't a good reason to get rid of the coloration for scan mode. Even Ben Prime had some unique color coding. While the original series liked to use a black and white motif on Ben's shirt, uniforms, and the original Omnitrix, Omniverse liked to give 11-year-old Ben a black and green motif, with 16-year-old Ben having a white and green motif, reflecting his newer Omnitrix. The reboot kept all the alternate Omnitrixes green, but this might have been so we wouldn't be horrified at the deaths of the Bens we previously met. At the end of the day, the colored modes were far from vital to the essence of the franchise. I love what they did with the alternate Bens, and their colors make them instantly recognizable. But I always got so excited as a kid whenever a new colored mode showed up. This wasn't just a new alien, it was a new secret of the Omnitrix. As the color modes faded, the Omnitrix's faceplate felt less like a physical colorable object shifting its shape, and more like a generic screen, with more possible displays but a limited color palette. I hope that future iterations of the franchise bring back this iconic yet underrated detail,